As much as I've tried to cut the attachment between myself and my ex, who I think may be disorganized but leans more avoidant and I lean more anxious, I just can't seem to cut those ties. Is this just flawed thinking and holding on to hope on my part? Or is this what loving someone truly means? Loving them for where they are and not cutting ties, but instead focusing on yourself. To my mind, to simplify this question, it's basically, should I stay or should I go? Does loving someone as they are mean that I have to stay and deal with my own issues? Firstly, I want to just acknowledge that you're not alone on this particular journey of navigating love and attachment and the desire for a long-lasting and fulfilling relationship. And these questions that are raised are profound, and they do reflect the complexities and the beauty of human connection. So as we delve into these concepts, I hope that what I have to offer here might provide some clarity and/or inspiration. But again, as with anything that I might offer, take what resonates with you and just leave the rest. So the first thing I want to say is that love and long-term compatibility are really two distinct aspects of a partnership. And each one contributes differently to the overall dynamic, which we experience as a gestalt. And when I say a gestalt, it's the idea that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. So instead of 1 and 1 equals 2, it's more like 1 and 1 equals 10. But when we think about a gestalt, we don't think about its component parts. We just observe it as a whole. Picture like a bar sign, and all the little the small light bulbs are lighting up in a sequence, and that sequence comes together to spell out a word. And when you look at the bar sign, you just read the word. You don't see each and every little light bulb in it, but each and every little light bulb is a component piece that makes up the concept of the name, right? The whole word. So this is what a gestalt is. It's when these little component pieces come together and we experience it as a whole, but they are made up of different component parts. So relationships are very much the same way. Love in its purest form is an intangible expression of positive regard for someone. It kind of transcends time and space, and it's not necessarily bound by the practical considerations of a long-term relationship. So you can genuinely love someone for who they are and appreciate their uniqueness and cherish the moments that you spend together, regardless of what your attachment style is. And loving someone in this way is we might define as unconditional, right? We are accepting them for who they are. We're not pushing and pulling against them because we're loving them outside of our own ego. This type of love can lead to a deep emotional bond between two individuals for sure. Now, whether that evolves into a long-term relationship is a whole other matter, right? And that's when we have to look at the other component part, which is how compatible are you based on your shared values, beliefs, priorities, life goals, right? The things that are fundamental to constructing the structure of a long-term life together. So these are really the cornerstones of what's going to build the foundation of a partnership that can weather the storms of life over time. Now, compatibility really ensures that you both are aligned in your vision for the future, that you have complementary communication styles, and you are willing to grow together as life unfolds, right? You're able to show up to the relationship with a generous attitude. And so it's really essential to recognize that love and long-term compatibility can coexist. They are these beautiful threads that wind together into a lovely tapestry when those compatibility dimensions are there, but they're not necessarily dependent upon one another. So while love can foster a strong emotional attachment, it doesn't guarantee that the relationship is going to be harmonious, especially if there are fundamental differences in what you value, right? Or in what you prioritize. So for example, you might be a couple that is deeply in love, but if one person wants to settle down and have a family, well, the other person really yearns for constant travel and exploration and exploring their autonomy, then that's not going to work. Doesn't mean you don't love each other. Doesn't mean you can't accept the other for what they value and prioritize, but it's not going to be compatible in terms of developing a long-term relationship. But if we try to make that work, if we try to shove a square peg into a round hole, then that's when we start to become very frustrated. And when we have insecure attachment dynamics, we start reading meaning into things. Well, if they really love me, then they would just change what they value and what they prioritize to be with me, because I should be I should be the all-consuming priority and top thing. Like they should change who they fundamentally are just to sustain this love that we have. But that's not truly loving, that's egoistic. And it stems from fear. It's an existential fear. So let's talk about this situation specifically, the one of our inquirer. If you're feeling yourself feeling attached to your ex who exhibits these more avoidant / disorganized tendencies, and you lean towards this anxious attachment style. So it's important to acknowledge that these attachment styles that we have can stem from early life experiences, and they impact how we relate to each other, and it also impacts how we express our love. And because of that, we may be drawn to each other on that emotional and psychological and physiological level because we are finding some familiarity in the patterns of relating that you have sort of etched onto your brain and unconscious mind since childhood. So that's that sense of instant knowing, instant understanding, that sense of like, I know this person, they're mine. Because the brain and the body, it etches those blueprints, the way that your parents moved, the way they spoke, the intonation of their voice, the quality of the physical affection and contact that you receive. Your young brain etches all of that into your synapses, and it starts looking for that because that is what it believes it needs to survive on an attachment level, because you need close, loving figures to survive. And the young brain doesn't filter any of that. It doesn't say, oh, that's healthy or that's not healthy. Oh, that's well-boundaried or that's not well-boundaried. Doesn't know any of that. So when we meet someone that triggers those old blueprints, we just feel that sense of, oh, I just feel magnetized to this person because on the unconscious level, we feel we need them to survive. It's an existential concern. But it's crucial to realize that that presence of love, that presence of that magnetism doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to evolve on a practical level. In fact, it's entirely possible to love someone deeply. And then oftentimes we also might be on an unconscious level, if we're looking at this through the framework of inner child work, right? And healing our part, that we've called this person into our experience and we're drawn to them because it's an opportunity to relive in order to revise those old wounds. But the idea is that that revision occurs through a process of integration, and that is a very intentional process. However, if we only wind up in a reenactment of old dysfunctional patterns, then sometimes it's called a trauma bond, or it's called codependency, or it's called something else. And this sort of dysfunction becomes repeated in the relationship between you. And that's not really conducive to a healthy, long-lasting partnership. Now, about whether cutting ties is the right choice, if it contradicts the idea that you truly love someone. So I want you to remember that genuine love also involves the desire for the other person's well-being and growth. And so sometimes the most loving thing you can do for someone and for yourself is to step back, right? And allow each person the space to heal, evolve, to discover their own path, if that's what's called for. And so cutting ties doesn't mean that it is diminishing the love that you feel. It can allow both individuals to follow their own individual journey, whether that is a path of self-discovery and healing, right? And if it is, then maybe in time with newfound clarity and personal growth, you might find your way coming back to each other and experiencing a more authentic connection if the universe deems that your paths will align in this way. But sometimes it means that someone else is choosing to remain still, that someone else is not ready to evolve into whatever level that you're ready to evolve into. And it is equally loving to allow them to be where they are in their process. Just by virtue of needing to force them into something, you yourself diminish your level of consciousness. Comes back to the idea that your purpose is not necessarily your potential. We are all from spirit. We are all from source. We all have unending potential. But sometimes your purpose here is to investigate specific quality of experience. We are spiritual beings having a physical experience. And so how can we know the fulfillment of potential if we do not know the failure to fulfill our potential? So failing to fulfill your potential in the eyes of source or spirit is just as valuable as fulfilling your potential. So if you're with someone who you think is failing in their potential, how do you know that in their stagnancy, they are not succeeding in their purpose? So this is where we have to pull back and we look at things from what I call a moon's eye view. Now, bringing this back down into the earth, into the material plane, into a relationship where maybe you are the one that's wanting to evolve and they are not, it's crucial to honor your emotions, right? To know that they are valid and that your emotions are not more or less valid based on how someone responds to them. They are what they are. And you have to give yourself permission to feel them and to process the things that come up during that time. And also embrace your strengths for what they are and learn from them, because that level of self-awareness is really a powerful tool for your own personal and spiritual growth. And when you're able to really give yourself over to that process, it's almost like a process of allowance or surrender, then that is also going to lead to healthier relationships in the future. So just remember to treat yourself with some kindness and some compassion. Give yourself a little grace. And instead of worrying about how am I going to strategize or negotiate my proximity to this person, think about what am I wanting from relationship in general? And what is the thing that I'm that my spirit is calling for and asking for right now? And then just following that. And as you follow that, your partner and other people, places, and things in your environment, they will fall in line, right? New information will be revealed to you, and you will feel a compulsion towards the direction that your soul wants you to take. So I hope that that was helpful. Also, remember to subscribe and ring the bell for notifications. I put out videos once a week, and I wouldn't want you to miss out.